environmental safety. And the team leader for who has been organizing this from our part is Mr. Jayashankar. He's the head of the engineering department who leads all the planning that goes on in CMC in the environmental change that happens. So anything that happens goes under his legal eye before it actually materializes. I hand over the session to him to call upon the chairpersons.
This environmental safety is the final session of, as I said. Our chairperson is Dr. Anna Pulimot. She is a vice principal, UG, and professor of pathology in CMC Hospital. She had completed medicine graduate in the year 1987 and completed MD in pathology in 1995. Also, she completed PhD on the pathology of IBD in 2010. Between 1998 and 2009, she worked at the University of Newcastle upon Tyne as a research associate in the Department of Surgery and Pathology. Also, she helped out start a solid waste recycling project for the hospital and college campus with the help of local NGO and women's self-help groups in 2005, and it's working well. I'm happy to invite ma'am on the stage as a chairperson. And our co-chairperson, Mr. J.S. Soundarnayagam. Mr. Soundarnayagam has completed Bachelor of Electrical Engineering from Madras University. Also, he has completed an MPhil in Hospital and Health System Management from Vellore University Institute of Technology. He is a well-known person in CMC because he has worked with us for more than two decades. Now his sir is working in the Tata Memorial Hospital, Kolkata. Thank you. I hand over the session to ma'am now.
Thank you, Mr. Jayashankar, and welcome to the final session of this conference. We'll start with the first speaker, Mr. Vishwanath Bhandarkar, who will be speaking about ambient air in hospitals. Mr. Vishwanath Bhandarkar is the Divisional Manager and Head of the Air Pollution Control Technology Development Cell at the Research Technology and Innovation Center of Thermax. He completed his BE from the REC Surathkal and Masters from IIT Kanpur. He joined Thermax in 1992 and has worked extensively on solutions of particulate control, solid waste management, effluent treatment, and indoor air quality. He's developed a state-of-the-art IAQ laboratory for indoor air studies at Thermax and has 10 patents to his credit in the field of air and water pollution. He's received a scientific breakthrough award for his pioneering work titled Photocatalytic Oxidation-Based Indoor Air Purification Technology. I invite Mr. Vishwanath Bhandarkar to give the first talk.
Respected Chair, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. Before I start with my presentation, I would like to take this opportunity to thank CMC for giving me this opportunity for presenting this topic today and all the hospitality. Thermax, for the people who doesn't know, is an energy and environment company located in Pune and has a global presence. The topic which I am going to talk today is on ambient air in hospitals. Air, as we all know, is the essence of human life. But do you all know what is the quality of air that we are breathing today? This slide says it all. Yeah, air pollution is the 5th largest killer in India. Delhi is India's asthmatic capital. Millions of deaths every year because of air pollution. This, mind you, in spite of having national ambient air quality standards in place. Unfortunately, we do not have any norms today in India for indoor air quality. What is the result? You know very well. It's all kinds of health effects which happens, maybe starting from a simple as headache to a throat irritation, going all the way to respiratory diseases, asthma, and so on. Yeah, so no wonder hospitals are booming. If you look at specifically importance of IAQ in healthcare centers, healthcare facilities will have to pay a particular attention and care, mainly because there are 3 factors. Yeah, one is the patient's risk. The patients who are admitted to the hospitals, of course, they have a very low immunity and they are very highly susceptible to all kinds of infections. Second important thing is occupation density. We all know how much flooded the hospital is. And because of the patients are at high risk. Third is the aging systems. Many hospitals are aging and the ventilation systems are outdated, and require seriously maintenance. If you look at IAQ sources, there are principally two types from where the IAQ can be eliminated. One is because of the poor or inadequate ventilation. Second is exposure to one or more contaminant sources in the building. Now if you look at ventilation, of course there are very many norms or codes in places like NBC codes, Indian Green Building, the lead green buildings, you know that. Then there is TERI, there is ASHRAE 62.1, which addresses all these ventilation issues, and there are guidelines which have been given for designing a good HVAC systems. But what about the exposures, which we normally see, the different contaminants which you see in the hospitals? How do we address those? What are the diseases acquired by inhaling airborne particles? There are two types of. One is something which is transmitted from persons to person, and being inhaled by airborne particles. Typically attacked because of viruses and bacteria, you know all that. Chickenpox, flu, measles, smallpox, etc. Similarly, whooping cough, meningitis, pneumonia, tuberculosis, and so on. There are also other diseases which are acquired from inhaling from the environmental sources, which is not directly from the patients but from other sources. Typical are legionary diseases, acute allergic enteritis, aspergillosis, and so on. So what is the framework for an effective IAQ management? There are basically 6 key drivers, if you may see. I will briefly address each of this. One is the communication or communicate. It is very important that you have a proper goals when you talk of IAQ to make it very meaningful. You need to be transparent. What I mean by transparent is you need to first acknowledge the fact that yes, there is a problem in our space, and then yes, you will work towards the solution. So, and once you implement the solution, it is important that you communicate those results. Second important aspect is the assess, walk the ground. What I mean is, yes, there need to be a core team which goes around, looks at the places where probably the chances of contaminations are high, and try and address those. Listen to the occupants, because there you get a lot of feedback and information of how the closed space all is about. Third is determine the baseline, because since there are no norms, it is you who need to decide what is the baseline that you will need to set. And once the air quality deteriorates and it is crossing those baseline, then you need to have appropriate measures to bring it under control. Identify and prevent risks. Use technologies. There are a lot of technologies available today. And you need to see which is the app technology which you can use for your application. Planning is very important. You need to prioritize actions. Put goals in writing, because unless you have goals in writing, nothing moves. Start small and then work in stages, because that is the only way that you will be actually addressing, instead of saying I'll address the entire hospital. Plan for the future, because many times we see we don't plan, we only plan here and now, and then as the population increases, then you find yes, we have problems, our HVACs are not working, then what do we do? Act. Educate and create awareness, which is very important. I think this 2-day session which we are having now is basically a goal towards that. That is, we are educating and creating awareness. Train occupants to address IAQ risks. Then comes evaluation. You need to solicit feedback and also work on the return on investments for the technologies that we are using. Organize. Systematic approach is very, very important. Then is the design of SOP, that is standard operating procedures. Once you design your standard operating procedures, then it's very important that you monitor it closely and you follow them. You need to empower an IAQ leader, form an effective team, and create champions. So these are the 6 key drivers. If you can really implement, then I think you will solve a lot of your IAQ problems. Of course, there is an action kit available. The best thing is source control. So wherever you find the source at which there is a problem, you please try and address those. If not possible, then of course, then you can look at HVAC, other air purification devices, and so on. Today I'll be talking more on the air purification part. What are the technologies that we have today or existing today? Basically, we play with only two things. One is HEPA filter, we know. So what do? We have an HVAC. This is what I have shown here, typically. And you have a room. So either your HEPA filters is placed at the entrance of your room, that is the terminal HEPA, or you can have it in the return line or within the HVAC. So HEPA filters, yes, they are good. They trap the particles, okay? But not so effective for viruses, number one. Second, if you understand, they only capture, they do not destroy. Third, they do not address anything about VOCs or toxic chemicals or gases that is also present in a hospital environment. Second technologies which you normally talk when you talk of IAQ management is the UVC, that is UVGI, ultraviolet light in the germicidal range, that is 254 nanometers. Of course, if you look into that, are they effective? I would say yes, it's very effective for surface disinfection, but not for air purification. The reason being, for airborne microorganisms to destroy, you need a contact time as well. Of course, they are hazardous. Energy intensive. If you see this chart which I put, the energy requirement varies from viruses to bacteria to fungal spores. And so, if you have to really address all these microorganisms, then you need to have a very high wattage requirements of the UVC. What I will be now talking is a new breakthrough technology that Thermax, in association with the University of South Florida and Advanced Testing Technologies in US, we have developed this technology. This is nothing but photocatalytic oxidation. So what are the fundamentals of photocatalytic oxidation? What you have basically is a non-owned fabric on which we have a coating of, nano coating of TiO2, titanium dioxide. So you know titanium dioxide is a semiconductor. I will little bit go into this theory so that you understand the principle or behind it. So basically TiO2 is a semiconductor. You know any element has a valence band and a conduction band, yeah? And there is something called gap energy. In case of TiO2, this gap energy is about 3.2 electron volts. So what I do is, when I energize this semiconductor with a light of proper wavelength, then what I do is basically, I transfer these electrons from the valence band to the conduction band, creating something called holes, or H+. Now there is moisture in air. So this H+ reacts with moisture in air to form hydroxyl radicals. Now the hydroxyl radicals are very strong oxidizing agents. So what they do is, as they come into contact with all kinds of microorganisms, which are basically carbon and hydrogen at the end of the day, they attack basically their DNA and destroys them. Okay, so this technology basically completely destroys the microorganisms or the pollutants in air. It is also effective for odors and VOCs as well. So this technology does not capture but destroys. And what is the end product? You get a harmless end product, CO2 and water. Now if you, just to understand what is the oxidation potential of hydroxyl radicals. Typically now if you see what is the disinfection that we use normally, is a chlorine, yeah? If I take chlorine as a oxidizing power as 1, then you can see in this chart, hydroxyl radical power is almost 2.8 times that of chlorine. So this is very, very effective for destroying all those microorganisms. If you look at a light source, what is the light source that I need to use for this? Typically going by the Planck's equation, E is equal to hc by lambda, where h is the Planck's constant and c is the speed of light. So if you see the wavelength, what I need is about 388 nanometers. Now if let me show you the electromagnetic spectrum, which all of you all know, it basically starts from X-ray and goes up to infrared rays. So what I'm talking is basically the light in the UVA range, which is very, very close to visible light spectrum, which is non-hazardous. What are the benefits of PCO? First, it is in situ treatment, yeah? So now if you are using, say, hydrogen peroxide, which you're talking in the morning, some of the speakers, you cannot have a hydrogen peroxide treatment done in situ. So you need to vacate the room, do the fumigation, leave it for some time, and then, of course, you can use this room. But this is an in situ treatment. We are not using any chemicals, no free radical generation in the atmosphere. The most important aspect is the complete oxidation of microorganisms to harmless products. So basically, if you see what does a photocatalytic reaction do? It deodorizes, it is self-cleaning, it purifies the air, and it sterilizes the air. So our offerings. Basically, we have standalone units, which would look something like this, where you can keep in one of your rooms, and it will do your job. What does it have? What does it internally contain? It contains a series of filters, basically catalytic filters coated with TiO2 with a light source in between. And of course, you need some pre-filters to guide these catalytic filters. We also offer you AHU integrated systems as well. What do you mean by AHU integrated? Suppose you have centralized air conditioning units where you have a AHU. Then we can introduce PCO within that AHU itself, like an HEPA filter. Yeah, it could be inside the HEPA filter, it could be inside your AHUs, it could be on the return line, or it could be sitting as a terminal filters as well. So all permutation combinations are possible. So you can have a standalone units, you can have a AHU integrated units, you can have a ceiling mounted units. Now this is a state-of-the-art R&D facility that we had developed for testing this photocatalytic systems. This is a duct-mounted unit which you see at the center, where we had actually injected different kinds of microorganisms and tested the efficacy of this product. Some of these microorganisms which we have successfully tested in our lab are E. coli, Streptococcus mutans, Staphylococcus aureus, Bacillus cereus, Aspergillus niger, you know the spore, which is very, very difficult to treat, then bacteriophage. And I have represented 4 results, and you can see the kind of destruction which is happening at the pace at which it destroys microorganisms. And here, mind you, you had put a very, very high concentration, somewhere between 10 to the power 7 to 10 to the power 10 CFU per ml kind of injections which we had done, and we could see the destructions happening in few minutes for most of the microorganisms. We also tested this product at one of the public health laboratories, which is a FDA approved lab in Mumbai. And this was done in one of the incubation rooms, which is a class D room, where you had a bacterial count varying between, say, something like 100 to 150, because it is not really controlled kind of atmosphere there, and a fungal count of in the range of 6 to 8 counts typically. And we could see a good amount of reduction in bacteria as well as fungal. Yeah, to conclude, what I would like to say is, if you have a problem with indoor air quality, we have a test equipment. We can give you a demo. You can have a look at it. And we can also generate this preventive checklist, and we have the specialists who can improve your situation. So what we believe is together we can do it. Thank you. Any questions and suggestions, most welcome. I think I have completed before time. Yeah.
Thank you for completing on time or before time. If there are any questions, we can actually take them now.
I can have. Hello. So I have myself a question to you. Now, see, during the course of your presentation, you may mention the titanium oxide will produce CO2. Am I correct? What is the end product?
Yeah, what end product is water and carbon dioxide.
So CO2 is coming, no?
Yeah, see, what happens is basically the moisture which is there in the air. Yeah, we are using the same moisture to generate these hydroxyl radicals, and the end product is carbon dioxide and water. Okay.
So what will happen to the CO2?
See, CO2, if you see actually the generation which happens, it is in ppb levels. Yeah, it is much, much, much lesser than the CO2 as we are now exhaling out. If
you want to use in the air conditioning system,
what is it?
If you want to use in AHU systems,
yeah.
What will happen if case then water is condensing and CO2 is formed? Suppose if you take some amount of oxygen we have to give, no? Then if you are introducing CO2, so it can filter only bacteria, but CO2 content, oxygen content is getting reduced. Am I correct or not?
No, because see, the CO2 when we are talking, the kind of CO2 increase which happens, if you see, it is not even 0.1 ppm per day. Okay, the CO2 which we are generating as human beings or exhaling out is much, much higher. And for information, I think you know the norms for CO2 is typically, if you say CO2 in ambient, typically when we talk is about 200 to 300 ppm. So it is 700 ppm above the ambient CO2 is the permissible norms for your indoor air.
So the water, what happens to the water also?
No, water, see, there is actual moisture in air. Okay, there is a certain amount of humidity in air. I am using the same moisture in air to carry out these reactions and generating the water. So there is actually a moisture balance happening.
So it will be better to put it inside the room because AHU function is dehumidifies. So moisture it removes to the humidity, no, RH to reduce. Again we cannot introduce moisture there.
No, sir. See, what I'm trying to say is we have measured the humidity levels and CO2 levels after running this unit. Okay, there is hardly any change. Because when we are talking destruction of microorganisms, we are not talking in a very large quantity. We are talking of microorganism destruction. So if you actually do the mass balance, so what is the carbon which you're trying to oxidize to CO2, or what is the hydrogen which you're converting into water, you actually even cannot detect the increase in CO2 and water, because we have done these studies in the lab.
Okay. Anyhow, CFM, you can have any CFM, suppose at what level you have products?
No, see, the advantage of this product is, what I am saying is, during the tea time, we were just discussing what happens to the old systems which are in place today. Okay, do you need to change the HVAC for increasing the air changes? Yes, of course, you can look into that. Other option is, you can have this product, okay, which will have its own fan, which will generate an additional CFM for you, and at the same time clean your room. So you will have a good product which at a lower cost.
Okay.
Any other questions, please, from the audience?
Is there a certain contact time for your filter, number one? And are you suggesting that this can replace the HEPA filter? And third one is, after all, microorganisms are microorganisms. So do you break them up so much that there is no pathogens in the air? Thank you.
I think there's three questions. First, let me address the HEPA filter. We are definitely not trying to replace HEPA filter. Yeah, it is a complementary to HEPA. So what is happening is, now if you look at a clean room applications, typically we are looking at pharma. Yeah, all these old pharmas, though you have HEPA filters in place. Yeah, now when you talk to any HEPA filter guy, or for that moment HVAC designer, how do they design? They design the systems for at-rest conditions. Yeah, nobody gives you guarantee for operations. That means you do not know how exactly the counts are going to change when people are going in that room and using those rooms. Yeah, so guarantees is given always for at-rest conditions, not at operation. So well, HEPA filters are there and it does its job. Because many of the times what you have seen is old HVAC designs. Yeah, morning also we discussed on what are the air changes which are required for a particular room. It varies, say, as low as, say, 4 air changes for a very benign room. Maybe if you're looking at very, very critical applications, if I may say a pharma application where you have a class A room, yeah, they keep in excess of 100 air changes per hour. So in spite of having all this, the problem is, yes, still they have these issues of microorganisms, yeah, and what we call is something called risk mitigation. You have everything in place, but still you would like to mitigate the risk. Yeah, if you are looking at this, then this is where this product comes into picture. Yeah, we are not talking definitely anything to do with the HEPA filter replacement. We are talking, yes, you have everything in place, you feel your systems are good, but you still find the problems, then this is a good product for you for risk mitigation. Yeah, that's number one. Second, what is your question, please? I forgot. What was the second question? The retention time. Retention time, retention time for pathogens. So what we have seen is in the duct trials, that is typically a AHU kind of situation. If you ensure that air is passing through your filters, so what happens is, first, there are two steps on how this destruction takes place. First, this microorganisms first adhere or adsorb onto these filters, and then this photocatalytic oxidation reactions takes place, and then they get destroyed. Yeah. So if I'm ensuring that I'm able to capture those and put on my filters, then you see in a single pass you see a pretty good reduction. But in case of standalone units where you're keeping in a particular room, yeah, then it depends on how are you going to take the air from that room and then filter through your units. So typically what we are saying is, if it is an AHU kind of systems, you get reductions at a very fast rate. But if you are talking of a standalone kind of units, then yes, you take a few minutes for the air to circulate and then purify air. Any other questions? Life actually, it depends on the kind of atmosphere that you're putting. What I mean is, if there is too much of dust, though we need to have some pre-filters prior to these filters, we would prefer mainly to be keeping it in a kind of clean room environment, not in a general open room. Because then, because of the dust, the filters get choked. Okay. Yeah, what we have seen is, we have ran this for last 1 year and we have not seen any drop in the efficiency. So what we feel is anywhere between 1 to 2 years, we can definitely guarantee the performance, after which, yes, you may need to change those filters.
If there are no more questions, thank you, Mr. Bhandarkar. We'll have the next speaker.
Thank you.